put shoes on.
Why are they?
So did you guys have to go just buy shoes?
Yeah, we went to Goodwill, Salvation Army.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we bought all, we have a golfer, it's so cute. I put them together, the golfers.
One of the top players.
It's getting them, the shoes kind of help.
Okay, we're gonna get started in 1 minute.
Different location. Does that make sense?
I'm so
Yeah,
tired
sort
of
of like a
dressing and
full
dressing
tournament
skeletons like a
Either
scream.
an hour, you're playing double.
It's awesome.
He's got to outgrow this sooner or later.
Oh, yeah.
That's so cool. I love Halloween. I know there's a lot of work that goes into it,
Park down by us.
like the
He goes, you know,
decorations.
We'll be sitting out on the porch and they got 2 cars.
No, no, we haven't even gotten to Christmas yet. No.
Don't take the light away from me.
Not anymore. I used to be, I used to complain. I got no breath now, they can walk around.
I'm not good at
You know, I don't have the streets.
stuff.
You didn't do the streets this time? No, I don't think I did. Hang on.
I have one. Are you on the streets?
Okay, it's 6 o'clock.
There you go.
You got to play people better than you.
Okay, today is Monday, October 4th, 2021. This is Barberton City Council. Tonight is a committee of the whole meeting. Before we get into that meeting, we will start with our individual committee meetings. Tonight we have 4. And the first one up is Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting. It's October 4th, 2021. It's 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. All committee members are present, and council members are present, and guests noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, there is no request for legislation today. Miscellaneous discussion, I have a few things that I just wanted to bring up. Last committee meeting, we talked about, Mr. Jaber brought up trash coinciding with street sweeping, and Mr. Tracy provided a quick answer or feedback that he believed that it was set up the way it is now so that street sweeping didn't clash, that cans weren't in the road when the street sweepers came by. So that was, and Mr. Tracy, I asked him again today and he did confirm that. So that is done to avoid conflicts. There was another part of that conversation though, that in general about the street sweeping schedules. And I know a couple members mentioned something about how it was set up. So I reached out to Mr. Tracy and told him that I would get with the individuals just to get specifics about, it was just general high-level conversation that we had here in council. I believe Mr. Heidick and Mrs. Angeloff had said something, but I just wanted to get more details on that and go back to him. But he did mention that the schedule is set in an ordinance. So I went and looked up that ordinance and I have the street sweeping schedule here. Again, the way it was set up is that trash and it doesn't clash with street sweeping is how they tried to set that up. The schedule for street sweeping hasn't been updated according to the ordinance since '93. And as you know, Kimball's fairly new. So with that said, if anybody had any feedback on the schedule, I'll send it out to everybody. I just got copies of the actual schedule list and I can send that out. But Mr. Tracy, to his point about the schedules with aligning with trash, if there was a change to be made, the scheduling is already, I believe, in the contract with Kimball at this point. So if we made anything, we could run into the issue that we were trying to avoid from the beginning. But Kimball's contract is up in 2023, I believe, March 5th. I asked the clerk to add a reminder on there to look at the schedules. It would make sense at that time to relook at the schedules, maybe to see if there's anything we can improve at the same time of either redoing a contract with Kimball or going to a new service. So, but we can still entertain the idea if we want to change stuff, but it could conflict with trash services. So, Mrs. Angeloff?
Thank you, Chair. The 3 days of trash pickup, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If I recall, that it was kind of set up that way for paving streets and whatnot, so you would have Thursday and Friday, open, and then that way, when we're doing streets, well, they won't do it on Monday because that's when the trash is being picked up. We'll do it on Tuesday. I think that has something to do with that too. We used to have trash a while back every day of the week. They were picking up every day of the week and combining it for 3 days, which leaves the other 2 days open for maintenance work or, anything of that sort. I think that's a plus there. The street sweeper comes at night. So, the trash is picked up in the day and it's at night. So I don't really see a big conflict in that, but it's something that we can look at with the street sweeping schedule. Is that right, Mr. Tracy?
Well,
With the
so the street
trash
sweeper does
pickup?
come at night or early morning, I guess.
Mhm.
you could
Yeah,
say.
early
It comes
morning.
throughout the night. But a lot of people put their trash out, the night before, so the cans are there. And when people put the trash out, they put it close to the road edge so that the trash driver can pick it up with the truck, which is exactly what the street sweeper does. He drives as close to the curb as he possibly can to get the brush to sweep the edge of the curb. So therefore, you have a conflict with the cans and the street sweeping truck and the mirrors and the truck and all that. So,
But I think I think on the ordinance, for the trash ordinance, I think it does say cans out to the curb area, so I think that ordinance says that too. So that would have to be, changed. That was just, one of the things I was looking at, that you only have the trash trucks in 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week. And I believe that ordinance, I'd have to look that up to see if it says bring the trash cans facing the road to the edge of the road. So that, if you're going to change this, then you're going to have to change that too, and tell them a foot off or whatever.
Yeah, and to that point, I think even looking at this for possible changes, we would have to closely collaborate with the administration.
Yeah.
Even though it's controlled through ordinance, we control it, it would definitely be something that we would have to coordinate with them. So, Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Angeloff is correct. I've got the letter from Kimball right here. Let's see. On collection day, pull your solid waste and recyclable material carts within 2 to 3 feet of the street with the lid openings facing the street. And that's part of Ordinance 8, 2018. So it is pretty close to the street with the bins that they require.
Mr. Tracy?
yeah, I wanted to kind of go back to the last streets committee and just touch on Councilman Jaber's comments. I don't know that they were specifically geared towards the services themselves, but more of the communication, if I recall correctly.
Right.
I don't know that there needs to be changes to the ordinances for trash pickup as far as the trash contract or to the street sweeping schedule. If we were going to look at any changes, they would just be adding the additional streets to the street sweeping schedule that aren't listed on there now that we do sweep, just as a just to clean it up. But I think the biggest concern was the fact that there were new residents and maybe they didn't realize that there was street sweeping, so maybe just some additional communication. That's how I understood it. So I didn't want to get too deep with this as far as the ordinances go, because it is successful in its current format, other than just cleaning up the existing ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Yeah, you're correct. Mr. Jaber brought up the communication part. 2 members after that, though, mentioned just not anything bad. They just mentioned something about the schedule bi-weekly, so I wanted to get with them to see if it was more of something they think could be improved or just general feedback from them. So that's why I pulled this up and everything else. So, Mrs. Antoff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think over the years of my employment here, and maybe Mayor can back me up on that too, that you get those calls every May, and it's usually, in the downtown area, because they're renters and, the landlord and you want to tell the landlord, it is your responsibility to tell them what day the street sweeper's coming through. It's only 1 day a week. That's all you have to tell them that. But the calls would be numerous. I mean numerous. coming in screaming and hollering, I'm not paying my ticket, and have the mayor pay it, and that whole 9 yards. So this isn't something new, this has been like forever. Okay, and even when we had the welcome packets that we would give out, it would have the schedule in there, the trash schedule, it had the recycle schedule, and the girls in utilities do a great job by, telling them, now your street sweeper, or your trash and that type thing. So it's in the paper. The street sweeping schedule goes in the paper, everybody sees it there. I know you don't get the Beacon, or you don't get the Barberton Herald, but on our defense, we do advertise, so it is there. So, but this is not, it's not a problem, it's just been a concern for as long as I can remember. Thank you.
Mr. Huddick?
Thank you, Chair. To Councilor Angelo's point, I don't know if it's possible, but when we do start, a couple weeks before we start the street sweeping, is it possible to send mailers to the rental registry?
I think
the
they
addresses on there specifically? Just to remind the residents that are renting? I don't know if that's...
They used to
We could
do,
always include that in,
Yeah,
if it's
in the
not
water
included
bill.
already with the rental registration, we can include that.
Mm-hmm.
We do point it out, so we reinstituted the new resident welcome pack. So renters may not get that, right?
Mhm.
But we do go through that, and it takes some time to point out some of those things. But we can definitely, if it's not already added to the rental registration form, we can add that to it. You're never going to get everybody. We put it on social media and the paper and everything. The other comment is when we talk about street sweeping in general, we want to make sure that the operator is safe as well. So their job, they're looking forward, but they're also looking down. That's why, basketball hoops at the curb are dangerous because that can clip them right in the head. So, plus kids should not be playing in the street. So we want to make sure the operator is safe as well.
Mrs. Angelo?
and I think the street sweeper maybe a few times would give out warning tickets to let them know. They used to do that, I don't know if they still do that, maybe a week or two.
So the police department obviously is one that gives out the tickets. The street sweeper will call them
Right.
if they have an issue. But, in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the program, the police department is very lenient, and they send out, they give out warning tickets. And I'm not sure about what their tracking system
Right.
is, but in a lot of cases, if it's someone's first offense, they'll just give them a warning ticket for it, and they won't actually get them or tow the vehicle.
Mr. Bevick?
I just wanted to make a comment, and I think maybe we just touched on it a little bit, but perhaps we could curtail that problem a little bit by, say, maybe a few weeks before or a couple weeks before street sweeping begins, that we have the police, rather than ticket, just leave a little, friendly reminder that street sweeping is going to commence on this date. And even, so for the downtown area, what I would say is that they don't know where to park. So maybe provide on that, it could just be a generic sheet of paper, provide options of where they can park. Because in all fairness, for example, on West Lake where I live, you have to go over to the community lot. There's nowhere to park. So, maybe something informative like that before street sweeping begins, and do it for a few weeks so that maybe you catch everybody that at least lives there before street sweeping begins. Now for new residents, that's problematic because that would not be a good solution for that. But for the others, it would be a good reminder. And also provide them information about where they can park.
Good feedback. Ms. Angeloff?
Yes, maybe you didn't understand, but usually, before the street sweeping schedule starts, or maybe the first several weeks, the police give them a warning, not a ticket, just a warning that on Tuesday night, your street's being swept. Give them a warning. And then they do that several different times maybe. I don't know, I can't speak for them now, but that's what, eons ago, that's what they used to do.
I believe I've seen that too.
Yeah,
And-
give like a warning saying, we're going to get you next time, don't park here.
Yeah, and it definitely would be beneficial. It's just how much extra work and who's going to do it for that extra information push. Is there any comments on this topic anymore? Public? I'm going to move on to the next piece of miscellaneous. I had it down here, but Mr. Tracy's here, so I'll just see if he can provide an update. Mr. Tracy, can you provide an update on the road program so far?
Specifically, you want the rest?
Yeah, just the Fifth Street one and where we're at as far as the asphalt company coming in with like the utility adjustments and everything.
So as far as Fifth Street, Northeast, State Route 619, I spoke with Rulon last week. Their subcontractor is scheduled to be in the city end of this week and into next week doing resurfacing on State Route 224 and also Fifth Street Northeast. So that is a tentative schedule for now. We've seen that get pushed back a number of times, but I expect them to follow through with this schedule because of the fact that it's getting to the end of the paving season. So we're making sure that we follow up with them weekly to stay on top of that schedule with the resurfacing of Fifth Street, make sure it gets completed. That project, and along with our residential road program and the AMS projects, are all kind of in the same stage right now. They're going to be doing utility adjustments on all of those projects, meaning they'll be bringing all the valve boxes and manhole covers to grade throughout all the streets that got resurfaced. That way you're not having any issues with plows and not getting access to the utilities once the road is paved. There'll be restoration to follow on all those projects, so any driveway aprons, ADA ramps, sidewalks that got replaced, they dig out the edges so they can form those up. They'll be like topsoil, seed, and straw to all those areas. So we're on the tail end, we're on the downhill of all those projects. There'll still be some pavement markings to be done, permanent pavement markings, that is, on the AMS projects. So there's still a lot of action going on, and I think we'll have a lot of activity throughout the entire month of October.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Does anybody have any questions, comments about the road program? Any other miscellaneous topics? About street, sidewalk, and lighting? No? Seeing none, well, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mrs. Fry and seconded by Mrs. Angela. Street, sidewalk, and lighting is adjourned at 6:16 p.m.
Okay, next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services meeting October 4th, 2021. Date is the 4th and the time is 6:17. Place is council chambers, all members present. Council also noted. We have no new request for legislation, but we have one request for appointments. A letter from Mayor Judge requesting reappointment confirmation of Terrell Fletcher to the Board of Health. The reappointment would commence on January 1st, 2022 and end December 31st, 2026. The application is in the packet. Any remarks? All right. Hearing none, a motion for that, please?
Also moved.
I will second that.
Mr. Griffin? And Mr. Thomas? And the vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passed. All right. Open this up for miscellaneous discussion. Seeing none, a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I will second that.
Mr. Griffin. Mr. Heidig. And we are adjourned at 6:18. And with that, I pass, sir.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes at Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to bring to order the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee meeting. Today, Monday, October 4th. It is 6:18. We're in the chambers. All members are here, along with all of council members and guests as noted on my sheet. We have no new legislation to request. We have some appointments. The first one is an appointment, a letter from Mayor Judge requesting the appointment of Susan Wynn to the Design Review Board. Term would start January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2024. Everybody should have received her applicant in their mailboxes. Her resume is outstanding. She has been on the Design Review Board for 25-plus years. She's retired and can do some extra things when somebody calls and they want to know something, she's available. She's always, the chair of that, been voted in this year as chair, and she's very reliable, and she's so pleasant to work with. So, any questions regarding Mrs. Wynn? No? Do I have a motion?
I got one.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
She is the Design Review Board.
She is. Yes, I was going to say that she was number one when they first put this together, because of her background and that. And, she's just a very, very sweet lady, and she knows her stuff. And she's always available if anybody from the Planning Commission needs her, the Design Review Board, somebody new that's in the historic, area here about the colors and that. She's always so gracious. Any other comments from anybody from the galley? No? Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that.
Mr. Burgess first. A second?
I'll second.
Mr. Britt, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, I was sleeping. I was writing.
Okay, the next one is a letter from Mayor Judge requesting the appointment of Mr. James Haskell to the Barberton Board of Zoning Appeals. This will commence January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2027. That's a 6 years appointment. He currently is on the Board of Zoning Appeals. He was employed by the university. He asks the right questions when somebody might not ask a question. He's another one that knows the business of the Board of Zoning Appeals. He goes out and does his homework, he takes pictures, he looks at that, the zoning appeal, and he's very honest with his opinion. Any questions, comments from anybody from the galley? Nothing? All right. He does currently serve on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Coburn, thank you.
And I'll second.
Mr. Burris, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
George, you weren't sleeping over there.
Nope, not that time.
Okay. The third appointment I have is appointment, the mayor's asking for appointment of Mrs. Jolise Rogers to the Design Review Board. Her application, I'm sure we all received that, and I really have not met her, and I don't know her personally. She's a new applicant, but in reading her resume, it seems as though she's all about the Design Review Board, and she's interested in that, and that's all that I can say unless the mayor would like to say anything more about her.
Barbertonian, got a great resume, as you can see, involved in hospitality and the formation of several hotels throughout the area, in the financial world now, there's a position there. That's recently moved back to Barberton and wants to get involved. I know her family, I think she'll be a great addition to the board.
Now, her term will start January 2022 and run through December 31st, 2024. Any comments or questions from the body? From the gas? No? Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Coburn.
And I'll second.
Mr. Barrett, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, pending legislation, ordinance number 99, 2021, titled Zoning Map Amendment, Various Parcels in Norton Avenue, an ordinance authorizing rezoning of various parcels. I'm not going to read it all, just we've done this before. And it's being rezoned from C3 Community Center Commercial to I2 Medium Industrial. And there's one parcel that's being rezoned from RT40, which is 2-family, to I2 Medium Industry. We had, this has been on, this is our, we'll have our third reading next week. And if there's any questions, comments regarding the property on Norton Avenue from anybody? No? Okay. Moving on to the next one, pending legislation is number 100, 2021. It's a zoning map amendment, various parcels on George Street. An ordinance authorizing the rezoning of various parcels on George Street to be rezoned from RS 40, single-family detached, to RM 18, residential multifamily. The Planning Commission did meet, and they are not recommending the rezoning of these properties. But I'll have Mr. Hunt, he can go into a little bit more detail on this, so we're aware of this when we vote on this next time. Mr. Hunt?
Yeah, so as you may remember, this piece of legislation, as well as the previous piece that you mentioned, Norton, came before Planning Commission in July. In this particular instance, the reason I'm commenting on this is Planning Commission did recommend to council that this not go, that the rezoning not go forward. Usually applicants, when that happens, they usually withdraw their application. But Clarence Engel, who's the applicant, did want to proceed with this and did want to have this go before council. So the way that it's worded, the way it's put forward to council is that if you do want to move forward with city planning's recommendation, it would require a no vote. If for some reason there's a super majority of a yes vote, the rezoning would pass. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I did speak with Law Director Miller on that, and that's how it's going to be presented to council. So, and the reason that Planning Commission, the rationale, Planning Commission, we have 2 Planning Commission members here before you as well, but in a nutshell, the reason they thought to recommend no on this was, so this is in a, if you look at the zoning surrounding this, it's zoned RS 40, which is residential single family. They're looking for a residential multifamily 18, and the proposal itself necessarily I don't think they thought was bad. They actually recommended that the applicant come back with a different type of zoning classification rather than the RM18, but they did tend to think that this would open the door to a multifamily, providing one, not consistent with the character of the area, and 2, opening the door for a lot of added density, and it would be technically spot zoning if it were to proceed forward. So it is too relatively close to a floodplain and floodway, and there's some thought that added development could add to some of the floodplain lows in this area. So that's the update from my end, and just wanted to make you aware for the vote for next week. So thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Hunt? Mrs. Dedetic?
I'm not necessarily sure if this is for Mr. Hunt or our 2 Planning Commission people that are in the room, and if they're willing to answer. But when was the last time that we did any sort of spot zoning? I know that we try to steer away from that, but I feel like we just had a recent.
The only one I know we did was the business around the lake, and that was 3 years ago. I don't believe anybody was there but me. The business on the corner.
Faith Jim?
The financial guy that redid that.
Denny Little.
Yeah, Denny.
Oh, Denny Little.
Okay,
That's
so
the
that's
last time.
been a
We
while.
try to stay from spot zoning because it gets us in trouble every time.
That was more than.
I feel like there was another. I was just curious. I felt like there was another one, but I could be wrong. I was just curious what the statistics were, because I know that we try to steer away from that. So.
So all I can think of right now off the top of my head, Faith Jim might have been involved, but that was tied into historical stuff, and that never did go through right anyway. So
That could be what I'm thinking of, and I think it actually did pass. So.
And if there's rationale within a city master plan, which we have a master plan from time to time, spot zoning isn't, it's frowned upon, but it's not necessarily. If there's rationale built into a comprehensive master plan, then there could be good reason for the city to do an occasional spot rezoning. But in this case, that isn't recommended.
Mr. Heidi, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Councilor DeBevec, you might be remembering the zoning for the former Castle Pizza on Worcester Road.
Yes,
Castle, that's right.
Yeah.
yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I thought that there was another instance that I recalled recent.
Yeah, that one was the most recent I remember.
Any other questions for, yes, Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. I was speaking with Councilor Griffin before the meeting there. I looked at the zoning map of the south side neighborhood there. There's over 500 parcels in that neighborhood. The entire neighborhood's RS40. There's not one, there's a couple commercial ones on Snyder,
Right.
but other than that, I mean, that would be, if you want to talk about spot zoning, that would be throwing a dart at a solid screen, and that'd be it. So, that's all I have there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Chair. Has anybody spoken to the gentleman one-on-one? Like,
Oh, yeah.
have you guys
Well,
spoken-
not any of us. I'm sorry. You're talking about planning
Planning.
or council?
Neither of you guys? I think you just try to communicate with him. Right now, what he's getting feedback is, we don't want him here. We don't want him to invest his money
He's
into the
very-
city.
He was here.
I know, but I mean, he was here last time, yes.
Well, and it's
That's
been,
not how it was. We talked to the man and
Right.
recommended that he goes back, and he actually agreed that if it went south, he was gonna go and try and come back with single family.
I just want to keep that communication, that bridge
Well,
with him.
yeah.
Yeah.
We
he's
talked to
been,
him one-on-one, all
All
of
of
us.
us,
in Planning
yeah.
Commission.
Okay, perfect.
Planning
Okay.
Yeah,
Commission.
because we liked his plans, just what he wanted it zoned at didn't even match what
It
he
didn't match.
wanted. So I feel like if there's a way that we can check that before he submits the application,
Mhm.
I don't know if that would help, but he's got a great plan, it just doesn't match with what he wants, or, you know, for the future owners that come in, I mean, if it's multifamily, it could change things drastically,
Exactly.
so.
And Mr. Jaber, the planning department, you know, they don't just say no, you know. They will work with them, the planning commission works with them. Mr. Hunt, Mrs. Carr, you know, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do this, you know. That's what their job for here is. We're just not going to say no, figure it out yourself. That's not what we do. That's not what any of us are here to do, or any department head's here to do. So I know that the planning commission and the planning department has been working with Mr. Engel on this, so. Any other comments?
I just got one more comment,
Okay.
Mrs. Angelo. I haven't talked to him personally, but he knows how I feel about it through other people. But I've been contacted by other residents in the area
Yes.
that don't want that to happen. They'd rather for it to stay single family instead of like Mr. Heidick was talking, you got all of R40. So if you approve him, then down the road, you're gonna have them
Right.
stuck every place, and that's what we don't want. That's too much runoff, floodplain, plus it'll just take away from the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Mrs. Colby?
Mr. Hines, so we need to vote no to continue, to follow the recommendation.
Of Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I got that right.
That's no to rezoning. Any other questions? No? All right, the next pending legislation I have is 112-2021, and it's titled Amend Barberton Codified Ordinances, Amusement Devices, Skill-Based Amusement Machines and Arcades, an ordinance amending section 836.04B of the Barberton Codified Ordinances, license fee, transfer, and display of amusement device, skill-based amusement machines, and arcades. This would amend Ordinance 53, 2012. As you can see, I had that memorized. This was, this will have its second reading next week. Any questions and comments regarding the language or 836.04B? Any questions? Comments? No? Okay, thank you. We're going to have a presentation by Mr. Hunt in the Planning Department regarding complete streets. This was at the September Planning Commission meeting, and we're going to have a presentation and then some questions after that. But go ahead, Mr. Hunt, we'll let you go with that.
Sure. And there's a PowerPoint that I was going to present that Summit County Public Health helped with that. So. All right. Thank you, Council. As Councilwoman Angeloff mentioned, this isn't anything necessarily to vote on, but just kind of something that's come to our attention through Summit County Public Health. It's actually been in the works for about 2 years, and COVID's kind of slowed it up a little bit. But it's a complete streets policy, and I'll just work through the presentation, and afterwards you can ask questions, and we can kind of just go from there. So this picture, this graphic probably sums up what complete streets is in a nutshell. You look at the image on the left, gentleman is walking his dog, the same image on the right, but you look at what's different about the street. And there's accommodations in the photo on the right, and that's really the basis for complete streets. This is a policy. It wouldn't necessarily go into effect on every single street in Barberton, but be something that we, the city, start to look at. Is there good reason to implement things that constitute a complete street? And it would be on a case-by-case basis. So I don't want anyone, thinking that, where's the city going to get all this money because every street's going to have to be redone. It's going to be something that if council does deem this appropriate, that it would be more of a long play, meaning, something that we would look at as a city over time. And Service Director Tracy and myself have been in conversation, and we'll continue those conversations as this matures a little bit here. So I showed you kind of the graphic of what complete streets is, but Smart Growth America, they have this definition. And to sum it up, you can read what's on the screen, but to sum it up, it's really providing accommodations for all modes of transportation. So anyone from the pedestrian to someone that's taking the bus to someone that's riding a bike. I even looked out my office window earlier today. I heard someone skating by on one of the scooters. So looking at these other modes of transportation that are emerging and making sure that we're accommodating not only for automobiles but for bus users and others in the community. So that's the general definition. And why Barberton and why now? In the past, we've actually been making as a community small strides to this in the past. I'll mention, I believe in the last 5 to 10 years, Barberton City Schools actually took on a Safe Routes to Schools program. And that was initiated by Summit County Public Health, if I remember correctly. And so we've been working with Christy Cato at Summit County Public Health. And there's a technical assistance grant where Summit County Health kind of keyed into Barberton and said, hey, you have the Safe Routes to School ordinance or policy, and also as a region, AMITS has been putting together some planning. The Connecting Barberton plan, where we have bike routes on several of our streets now with the repaving program, the Magic Mile. So there's some more regional and state policies that are kind of coming down in our direction. So this has kind of been in the works for a little bit, but it's really on behalf of Summit County Public Health why we're exploring this policy, this formal policy. And you might ask kind of where else is this going on in the region. There's 5 communities from talking with Christie that have enacted some form of like a complete streets policy. I know Councilwoman Angeloff went last October, November to the city of Akron, their street, Aqueduct Street. There was a tour that was led there by the folks there in Akron and Ammett, where they showed off the street and kind of the some of the reasons why it was a complete street. So just want to highlight where else this is going on. And these are kind of the complete street components: safe crosswalks, green spaces, tree lawns, bike infrastructure, active sidewalks, active roadways. But again, accommodating, kind of making sure streets are safe and accommodating all modes is the basis. You look at this street. I'm going to show you several just graphics of why this might be a complete street. This was probably at one point a 5 or 6 lane road. You can see it's changed into a 3 lane road with a bike lane and the center median with landscaping with a turn lane. I think there's a transition over time that is starting to happen in many American cities where they want to build a sense of place, and this helps, one, get people back out on the street, but two, also make sure it's safe for them. So there's a couple series of images I'll show you here. This is actually from the city of Indianapolis. They built a cultural trail. This is just a graphic of, maybe there's not the road within a cartway, but maybe there's a trail built alongside a road. So these are all components that can play into complete streets. Again, a graphic of a crosswalk. And here's another example of a trail built adjacent to a roadway. So this is generally in response to conditions like this that you see on the screen. Pedestrians that need to walk, they may not have other modes of transportation. They need to get somewhere, so they're going to cross the street somehow, some way. And, people are going to walk where they want to walk. And, this isn't necessarily an accommodating, this image isn't showing an accommodating situation. So we being the government have to find solutions for issues like this. And again, you can kind of see a couple images here of other examples of, folks are going to cross from time to time where they want to cross, and ultimately they may be taking their life into their own hands with the traffic that's coming at them. So we want to remedy the situation where we can. Again, this won't be a wholesale change. It will be a more of a periodic change if this is a policy that we as a city feel comfortable with. Try to fill in the gaps. So I think we've all seen this situation pretty much. You can probably pinpoint a place in Barberton that reminds you of an instance where we have a sidewalk and then all of a sudden it ends. Maybe there's good reason for that. Sometimes there's not good reason for that. So we want to start studying this a little bit. Again, these are kind of the overarching issues of why we're looking at this. I guess to do the right thing, you saw some of the images before of people not really having a place to walk. Improving quality of life, and then the health and economic impacts as well. So these are just some stats that the county, I think these are national stats, where walking along the roadway accounts for 10 to 15% of all fatal pedestrian crashes. There's fewer in urban areas, mostly because there are sidewalks in urban areas, but they happen everywhere. So they're not just in rural areas, but they're less likely to happen where there are sidewalks in urban areas. Paved shoulders helped, but if you look at having sidewalks, those reduce pedestrian crashes by about 88%. Then in terms of economic development, you look at both sidewalks and trails, they tend to have a positive impact on property value. So this is just a generic stat, but there is some evidence that we can probably find that would point to where there are sidewalks and trails, higher real estate values. And then, I think I think, there's a general buzz in the planning world about providing amenities such as this, but I think there's also some fact that, you can find different businesses that have developed along trails that didn't exist there before. And I think there's some good examples along the towpath trail. I know we've talked with Dan Rice in the past month or two, and he's pointed out several examples. And this is a stat that we found, specific to Ohio, trail users spend about $13.50 more per person per trip. And the other thing I want to note here is that oftentimes when you search for real estate these days, is they'll give you a walk score and bike score of the place that you're looking to buy. It's just become a trend within the real estate industry. And Barberton, you can see kind of how we rank compared to Akron and Lakewood. I would argue that our infrastructure is not too far off in terms of our inherent blocks, and walkability is almost there, but we sometimes don't have the amenities. But if you look at communities like Solon, Ohio, for instance, or some of these other communities, their walk scores and bike scores are going to be much lower than this, because they're not inherently built in a fashion that promotes walking and people cycling. So I think that we're actually at a competitive advantage compared to most other communities in Northeast Ohio. It's just kind of building these amenities into place over time. So this again, some more just general information about health. Summit, in particular, according to Summit County adults, about a quarter of the population report no leisure time for physical activity, and another third of the population reports being obese. So then you look at the general health benefits to having places where people can walk and they can cycle. Counties with the lowest level of biking and walking have, on average, the highest rates of obesity, diabetes, and hypertension. And the Center for Disease Control's recommends a complete streets policy adoption as a strategy to prevent some of these poor health outcomes. So, and again, this image just kind of highlights some of the things that complete streets policy looks for. These are just kind of general four. I'm sure there's plenty more, but 4 general health benefits. Women who walk or bike 30 minutes a day tend to have a lower risk of breast cancer. A 30-minute round trip bicycle trip is associated with better mental health in men. Exercise is used to treat PTSD, depression, substance abuse, and other psychological illness. And people who live in walkable neighborhoods get more exercise than those who do not. So this, I guess, is a conversation for another day, but we have a draft of the complete streets policy. I'm happy to share that draft with you all. Again, it's in draft form. Our intention is to bring it before Planning Commission, and Service Director Tracy and I have also sat down and reviewed it a couple times. I'm sure there'll be questions, so we hope to solicit feedback from you all, and ultimately, I guess Planning Commission will want to weigh in on this, and it's something that we'll take back to Summit County Public Health, and they'll kind of say, hey, this is appropriate, this isn't appropriate, or you should consider such and such. So we're still kind of in the exploratory stage, but we are moving forward, and we've been at this again about a year. I know there's been some interruptions because of COVID, but that's kind of generally where things stand. And just wanted to put this out for information for you all today. So if you have questions, feel free to ask away. Again, I can send out the draft policy that we have so far. Councilman Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. How would you determine which streets to do first? What's the criteria? What's the qualifications, permissive and all this other stuff? What would you do first?
And that's something that Service Director Tracy and myself will have to sort through. There's a street hierarchy, and we'll have to probably put together our thinking caps and do a little bit more planning about this. I know before you guys approve anything, you'll probably want a little bit more of that thought out. So we aren't there yet. I was just at the stage in the game of more or less trying to get you guys thinking about this. Service Director Tracy can weigh in more there if he wants to, but it's probably something that we'll kind of work at periodically and try to get you more of an update there before, we have anything concrete. So, good question though.
I have a couple of questions and a comment. I just want to piggyback off of Mr. Griffin's comment because I think it's a slippery slope to say it's subjective about which streets are going to be done. We definitely have to have a plan, and if you're looking at poor health outcomes, exercise is key, but I'm sure that Summit County Public Health would agree that there are much poorer health outcomes for low-income neighborhoods. So when we're thinking about main streets and things, that doesn't exactly hit in my opinion, the objective of, one of the objectives, which was why it was brought up by Summit County Public Health. So I think we need to really keep in mind when we're developing that list of streets that lower income neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks, that's the population already that has a poorer health outcome. And that's just a statistic. And secondly, this is more of a question. So I saw technical assistance grant up there. So is there grant money available? Has the grant money been given to the county? Is it something that the city has to apply for? What kind of match are we looking at? How is it funded?
So to answer your question, this is in fact the grant. The Summit County Health Department selected the city of Barberton as part. They received federal money that's allocated down through the state, so it trickled down to the county, and the technical assistance grant is in fact what we received. It's technical assistance from, there's a planning firm called Tool Design that worked with several of us at city administration, and they really helped provide this draft policy.
So how much grant money is there?
That was internal to Summit County. That's something that they worked through. So we were never purview to that.
How much is Barberton's share? Or do we not know? Are we supposed to devise a plan without knowing what our part of the technical assistance grant we're going to receive?
Yeah. So this, like I said, this has already been enacted, and in fact, it was enacted prior to me starting here. So I saw that Greg was raising his hand, but meaning the grant money has been allocated to the health department. It's not like we, the city, will receive additional grant money to enact complete streets themselves, like actual physical money, but it might make us eligible in the future to receiving grants. Greg, I don't know if you have more to add.
So, as far as that specific grant, I'm not entirely familiar with that, but when you apply for like the TASA grants or AMATS grants, having a complete street policy gives you more points for those grants, so you have a better opportunity to get more money. Now, I know today was just a real quick, run through of what a complete street policy is. Obviously, you're all going to have a chance to read the draft policy that has been developed between Trevor and Summit County Health and myself and other individuals. It's not what it appears, what I'm hearing from council right now, or maybe a little bit of a misconception that you're not going to take and try to create projects specifically for complete streets. We are already implementing certain principles of complete streets throughout the city, which I think is evident in some of the projects. If you notice, the bike lanes on 2nd Street, there will be bike lanes on Norton Avenue. We're looking at a multimodal path on Worcester Road West for that project in 2023. All the safety funding that we've gotten for Worcester Road West, Phase 1 from Worcester Robinson and Phase 2 from 4th Street to Hudson Run, that's all has different parts of complete streets built into it. So what we would do in the future with this policy, it would, anytime you go to do some type of work, you would look at your complete streets policy and say, okay, can we feasibly make these improvements along with this resurfacing project or reconstruction project? are there different things that we can do to make this project more applicable to all users? So it's something that we're doing, just not to the level that this policy outlines. So as you read it and look through it, I think that'll become more evident. Obviously, you're going to have lots of questions, but it will help moving forward with additional grant funding with multiple different grants.
And I just want to make mention that I asked Mr. Hunt to present this today, so we can talk about, think about it, and the draft policy that he can email everybody to kind of give you some ideas. This isn't anything that's going to be done overnight. They've been working on this for a while, and council wants to be involved, and I think this is a good way to start, and any comment is welcomed. You could email Mr. Hunt or Mr. Tracy with, comments or ideas, and we can go forth with that.
And again, I want to mention too, we're thankful to Summit County Public Health for selecting Barberton.
Yes.
Because not every community is really in our shoes to be awarded. I think they awarded us a Better Block grant, and as well as one other previous grant here. So this is really a follow-up on that work that has been done previously.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I guess, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So we've been awarded the grant, but the grant isn't money. I'm confused about.
It's technical assistance, that's what it was. It wasn't money, it was technical assistance through Summit County Public Health.
What do
So
we mean
Summit-
by technical assistance? I'm sorry, you must have to spell it out for me.
Yeah,
So that I can
so
understand.
the planning firm I mentioned, Tool Design, who was contracted through Summit County Public Health. So rather than the city fronting the bill to go out and get a private consultant.
Okay,
It was technical assistance because Summit County
I
Public Health
understand now.
fronted the bill.
so I was under the impression that we were going to receive a grant to possibly complete some projects if we adopted this, but that's not the case. They just helped put it together. That's what we got money for.
Yeah, they coordinated essentially.
Gotcha.
And selected Barberton. Yep.
So in essence, the county is doing the work, and we're just okaying it. We're not footing any bill, we're not putting any cash up of our own.
Exactly.
The county holds the money, we say, yes, do this.
No.
No, the county only, your brain is exactly where mine is, at least the way I feel like you just explained it to
Well,
me.
Who's doing the work? Who's paying for it? We give,
We didn't pay anything. The Summit County Public Health awarded Barberton the grant, meaning it was technical
Right.
assistance that was supposed to be an aid to us. to
So
help
they
us.
paid for tool design. That's what the grant paid for, is the way I'm understanding it.
That and probably some of their staff time and probably a couple other instances where we kind of referred to other experts on the issue. Yeah.
So they paid for us to get this layout that you had, the presentation. They helped you come up with the presentation of what a complete street was.
This is 95%. I talked to Christy earlier and said, hey, I was going to add a slide about what other communities, and so yes, this is 95% Summit County Public Health.
Okay.
so, I just have one last question, if I may there. So if they looked at Barberton and awarded this technical assistance, they had to base that on something. What was what sold them on us? Did they see certain streets? Did they see certain, I guess I want to know what steered their attention towards us, because there had to be, even to them, some criteria. There had to be some sort of logic to their decision. What sold them
Yeah.
on Barberton?
I can't exactly speak to that because when I stepped into this position, it was ongoing, and then COVID hitting, there was a little bit of a pause, and then it resumed. So I don't know exactly what their basis or rationale was. I do know there's a good working relationship. Christy mentioned Better Block. She mentioned, I think, that we have the Safe Routes to School program in place. So there must be a good working relationship that existed before I started here, and I can't necessarily explain that because I wasn't here when that happened. So
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I got a couple questions for you, Mrs. Angela. Any updates on the Copart? Any new updates on that, when they're supposed to start?
No, not yet. Mr. Hunt, that wouldn't come to me anyhow, that would go, Mr. Hunt, any
In
other?
July, I reached out to them and, sorry, everything.
No, go ahead.
In July, I reached out to them and they had drawings into the building department. And they were working through that process. I believe they were pretty much set back then. So I don't know. I was expecting ground to break any day here now, but I've been by there and I was wondering the same thing. So I can reach back out to them. Roger may know too, more in the building department.
Right.
So.
And one more thing, Ms. Angela. If you can, I had the owner of the cigar lounge, he applied for the cigar lounge September 8th. He still hasn't got no feedback from the planning department.
Mr. Hunt, I don't work in the planning department, you'd have to address that to him.
But you're in the committee, you're the chair of the committee, that's why I asked.
Mr.
That's
Hunt.
not our job.
I'm sorry, Ms. Coburn, I was talking to her.
About
This
the,
is twice you've interrupted me, Ms. Coburn. President, make sure you know the rules you set before.
I apologize.
There we go, I appreciate that, thank you.
Can we continue? Mr. Hunt, would you like to answer?
Application is working its way through the process. There are
Okay.
some questions, and so wanted to make sure that everything, all the boxes were checked before we got back to the applicant. So it's working its way through.
The applicant, here's what I'm just concerned, since he's been waiting 4 weeks, he's looked at other cities, he's went to Wadsworth, he made a purchase agreement for $99,000 for the property. The landlord has showed that property to someone else now because he's been waiting and there's no feedback.
Right. So we'll get in touch with them, but it's working its way through the process, the legal process, to make sure that all boxes are checked. T's are crossed, I's are dotted.
I appreciate it, I just don't want to lose, new potential business owner and also a landlord who invested in the city.
Yep.
So if we can get back to it, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. That'll be it, Ms. Angela. Thanks for your time.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Mr.
make that.
Hedges,
Second.
Mrs. Coburn, and we are adjourned at 7:00 p.m. Who made the first?
Mr. Medges
Oh,
did.
okay.
Okay, next up is Finance Personnel, Mrs. Fry. And I'm amazed, there's nothing on your agenda.
I know, it's going to
That
be a
is
quick
something
one.
else.
Let's see how fast we can do this. Thank you, Mr. President. It is 7 o'clock, Monday, October the 4th. We're in council chambers. All members of the committee are, all members of the committee are present, as well as council members and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. There was no legislation requested this week, and we also do not have any pending legislation. Therefore, does anyone have any miscellaneous questions or comments for finance? Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. I did speak, or have a email chain with the mayor here with the unfortunate situation with our school bus drivers. I did inquire if it was at all possible that any of our CDL city workers would be able to step in, and he did inform me that they are in fact two separate licenses, so I know I had some people asking me if there was something we could do with our own workers, and they're completely separate, so they weren't able to cross over there. It's unfortunate with the schools, and wish we could step in and help some, but CDLs for transporting people are different from CDLs for work trucks. One group of people can't work one, and the other can't work the other, so unfortunately, that was,
Plus the fact that they work about the same hours.
that's the other point there, but, it's, when we talk about our schools, if we can help them in any way, we can, but just so everybody knows that that wasn't an option.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Mrs. Angela?
Plus, I think it's two different unions, and I don't think the bus drivers have to have the CDL where, our equipment, some of that have to have CDL, so it's completely different. That was my thought. I have a sister-in-law that's a bus driver, so wish we could, but we can't.
I think a lot of school systems are having the same exact problem, but I don't know what the solution will be.
I did see that the Massachusetts governor ordered the National Guard in to help with their busing, which, if it gets to that point, that's not a good sign.
Does anyone else have any comments?
So
Mrs.
I
DeBevick?
have, again, once again, my question does not fall under finance and personnel. However, we don't have the committee meeting this evening, in which it falls under. But I was just wondering, this is for Mr. Patterson. I've received many phone calls regarding the hoops being removed at Tusk Park. I understand there was an incident. I have been reluctant to respond to the calls because I don't really feel like I'm qualified to do that at this point. And so I was just wondering, did the Parks Commission make that decision? Who made that decision? And what is the time frame we're looking at based on that decision?
I can answer that question. No, I made the decision. We put the press release out last week. We did not take the basketball rims down. We closed the basketball court. We did not close the park itself. There's been a number of incidents up there at Tusk Park over the last few years. You know, you're going to have different things happen in different parks, and we monitor all those things. Mr. Patterson does a great job. But when you start having gunfire with members who are playing a basketball game, and both sides have guns, and the bullets have no names. I'm not going to stand for that. So I made the order to close the basketball court to further notice. We're constantly evaluating things at the park. I received over the weekend an email from Councilman Greer. So that's kind of the plan, is to evaluate things as we move forward. There's no date to open the courts. But we want to make sure that everyone in and around that neighborhood, everyone at the hospital, and those using the park, because we want people to use the park, are safe. The people that were involved in the incident the other night, at least the people who were either detained or arrested, were not from Barberton. So whenever there is an issue and there's gunfire, I will do everything in my power to close things down. I don't want to take that step, but when you're talking about the possibility of loss of human life, yeah, we're going to take those steps. So we'll evaluate things as we move forward, but I make no apologies. It was not an easy decision. I did talk to Mr. Patterson. I talked to the chief, the safety director, and others. So this is what we'd like to do. I'm not going to have some incident on my hands because we did not react. No decision is, or not making a decision is one that I'm not going to stand for. So, it's an unfair decision. It's something that I don't want those that use the park for good intentions. I don't want to hurt those people, but we do have a multitude of parks in the city, and the fact that the detainees or arrestees were not from Barberton, that tells me a lot. There's a lot of programs out in the country. Some have kind of dissolved over the years because of legalities associated with it. And in this instant, our police were in the area. And they drove by and they saw a group of guys playing basketball. There's no reason to stop. No more would we. Things escalated. I don't know exactly what happened. And then the gunshots rang out. And if you're familiar with Tusk Park, you know that homes are right across the street. You know that there's a hospital right across the street. Our officers arrived in record time, stopped the car just around the corner. And so I did hear from some of the residents that live in and around the park and make use of the park. And, they, actually, as we were discussing this internally, they made that suggestion as well. And I've heard from some others who live in and around the park and make use of the park, and they're very happy about it. Again, we don't want to, fault anyone, or not fault, we don't want to, blame anyone or take a basketball court away from kids who may use it, or anyone that may use it. But, a decision had to be made. What are we going to do? We can't stand an officer there 24/7. You can't stop and frisk. You can't do a lot of things. So we made the decision to pin the nets up, and we'll continue to evaluate as things move forward.
If I may just ask, just so that I can explain to the to I can return some phone calls. So if the hoops are not down, how are we enforcing the closure? Because I haven't been by, so I can't speak about that, so
There's signs up, if an officer goes by and there's someone playing, they'll instruct them that
Okay.
the courts are closed.
Okay, thank you.
So-
I just want to be able to effectively,
So the park is
Answer.
not closed, there's a lot of seniors that make use of that park early morning, throughout the day, walking their dogs or grandchildren, things of that nature. Want to make sure all of our parks, we're stepping up patrols, but, in this case, both sides brought guns. And, they're not from Akron, they're not from Barberton, excuse me, and, we can't stand for that.
I know, it's a difficult call because, I live on Lake Anna, so does Craig. I'm sure he sees lots of shenanigans, and Lake Anna's completely surrounded by homeowners as well. It's just it's just a really unfortunate, difficult choice.
Yep.
Mrs. Angela.
And yes,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I want to thank the mayor, and I want to thank Mr. Patterson, because it was quick action. I had lots of calls, numerous emails from the residents around there, and I said, the mayor will be, doing something quickly, and it was done really quickly. In fact, I went to a football game, and it was Barberton's football game, and it was away, and I probably had 24 people coming up to me from, just not in Ward 2, in other wards, saying, tell the mayor, thank you for closing those down. We don't want any deaths, and they were actually thanking me. So I think that's a concession of most of the people that live in the area, any area that you have a park. They were all built in residential areas, and it is scary, and we don't want anything to happen to our own or anybody else. We don't want that to be part of Barberton. So I did get quite a few thank yous on how quickly the mayor and Mr. Patterson made that decision. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Bevick and seconded by Mrs. Angela. And we are adjourned at 7:14 p.m.
Okay, that concludes our committee meetings. Take a 2-minute break, and we'll go right into committee of the whole meeting. I already had, but virtual.
Oh, shit, back up. Get it back up.
$50 dinner. They're just trying to make money. But $20 just to get online.
Yeah, right. I think there's
Just because of my thing.
Well, I get the yes and no, to an extent. But at least something, hey, just check out,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, you're right.
this is what I'm trying
But
to
you
figure
get
out.
a little packet of something
Yeah,
that's gonna cost you money. And the whole thing is, I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. The foundation dinner is virtual, and you either pay $20 or $50.
I wanted to,
That's amazing.
because that was something, I called Greg, full, building department, full.
You know what they just, see what they trace that all, $75.
Well, thanks for letting me.
Sure. I thought nobody had it except for
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, you see Sonny's daughter down there? He did.
Doesn't like you.
Which I was wondering how that went, because,
Hey, Bill.
but I was gonna say,
It's here.
was everybody, wasn't what everybody thought, was everybody informed? Because I
Lots
thought
from
everybody
reading
thought
that.
that girl's husband was the father. She grew up thinking that was her father. That would be,
Oh, I know, they were just, they couldn't believe, I mean, they caught me, they lost
It's either gas or wood.
Yeah, right. And she's how old?
That's it.
About 28?
It's when, but that's it. Best.
Did you see that thing? You don't watch TV.
How you
Did you
feeling,
see that
Bob?
thing on
Feel better?
CNN about called The Lost Sons?
Look like you lost some weight though.
That was weird. It was about a kidnapping years ago in Chicago, like over 50 years ago.
I'll help out.
They took the baby as soon as it was born, blah, blah, blah.
In a healthy way though.
So they looked for it for like 2.5 years. And they found this kid on the street in New Jersey. So FBI.
Not everybody's on a diet every month.
So these people raised him their whole life and
I'll try after the holidays. Now it's way now. You get rid of the holidays.
when DNA came out, he got tested. Here he was from, like he has a twin sister.
I got a new recipe I'm trying this year.
The kid that was kidnapped was like 4 hours away and was raised by the woman that kidnapped him.
At least it's lean meat.
He died before he got to meet his mother and father. It was just really, but anyway, that made me think about the whole thing with, you know, and then that was on. I watched that Sunday, it was on a couple weeks ago. You know, you can go back. And I saw that on Sunday and I was just, oh, there's so many kids out there that don't know who their parents are. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The parent doesn't know who the other parent is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the mother does, but.
I didn't.
No, I'm saying the mother knows that that's her.
It depends on what
The
day.
mother knows it's
Well,
her child.
you can grab a
but I
school
didn't
bus
know
in
he
the morning.
was
You take them to school, I'll pick them up.
I'm barely tall enough to see over the steering wheel of my Jeep. I don't drive a bus.
We'll put blocks on the pedals and sit on a seat or whatever, so you can see over the.
Really, where it's parked.
Yeah, that's a horrifying situation. Luckily, ours is only done for like 10 days.
Yeah.
But
I talked to them.
I looked at it.
Yeah.
No, I talked to them last year.
I think he thought it was about
School
to.
was stopped up on First Avenue.
If you ask them what they want,
They had to walk.
they want it
Back up
checked
to the
because it
kids.
stops competitors from
Yeah.
coming in.
And it was.
They don't give a fuck when they're dead.
He can't take it. You want to drive a bus?
Price change.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, you know, I said.
Really?
It's got enough to do and
Yeah, enough.
driving that ain't gonna help there.
Kids.
Oh, yeah, yeah, not dealing with that one.
She's probably. She probably wasn't.
Where's that buzzer that when you cross the line when you bowl? Yeah.
Because he's afraid of it. We'll have 11 meetings on businesses, with businesses this week, and at least 2 next week.
No, you don't wait till you wait. No.
He just talked about
My back breaks.
That's your back here. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I only got one.
The game's on, don't worry. Don't worry.
Okay, we're gonna get started here. Everybody's
Before we
here?
start, give me 1 second.
Sure.
Billboards or airplanes or
Yes.
jets or something.
We didn't, no. We just carried on. No, that one is,
I know, okay, so I don't know why, I just, I literally.
I have notes to, well, receipts, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a,
Well, I was hoping.
you get into that groove, you know?
That'd be nice. You saw that.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
Just wanted to double check.
Yeah, no, we're good.
Okay, sorry.
A-OK potato chips. Good to go potato chips. There you go.
Yeah, you don't know.
Okay, let's get this meeting going here. Today's Monday, October 4th, 2021. This is Committee of the Whole meeting of the Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 7:18. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, citizens addressing council, I just looked up there, I saw nothing. So we'll get right into the committee reports. First up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes met this evening at 6:18. All members were present of the committee, all council was present, and members as on my sheet. We had no new legislation. We had requests. I have 3 appointments requests. One is on Susan Wing to the Design Review Board. The term January 1st through 2022 to December 31st, 2024. This was called on. Second was a letter from the mayor appointing Mr. James Haskell to the City of Barberton Board of Zoning Appeals. That term starts January 1st, 2022, commences December 31st, 2027. That's a 6-year term. He currently serves on the BSA, and that motion was carried forward. Another letter from Mayor Judge, appointment of Ms. Jolise Rogers to the Design Review Board. This term starts January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2024. I had never met her. I'm excited to meet her, and her application was all in order, and that motion was called for, and it was in favor. Pending legislation is Ordinance 99-2021, zoning map amendment on Norton Avenue. There was no questions, no comments. The third reading will be, and it'll be voted on October 11th, 2021. Second piece of pending legislation is Ordinance 100-2021, titled Zoning Map Amendment, Various Parcels on George Street. Mr. Hunt did explain that it was on the recommendations of the Planning Commission to deny his request for rezoning. So it's no to rezone and yes for the change in the zoning. Mrs. DeBevick asked about spot zoning, and I think Mr. Heidig then came up and said it was Castle Pizza. Mr. Jaber wants to know if the planning department has been working with Mr. Engel, which we have, and the Planning Commission has. Ordinance number 112-2021, amend Barberton Codified Ordinance, amusement device, skill-based amusement machines and arcades. And that was putting some wording on Chapter 836.04B that reads, I believe it says, no more permits will be given out after the date that this passes. And since there's no emergency, it will be another 30 days. So it looks like November 25th, 2021 that would go into effect. Miscellaneous, Mr. Hunt gave us a presentation on complete streets. This was, we were picked from Summit County Health Department. It is a long-term transportation, a technical assistant grant, and he will be emailing all of council the draft policy. Please take a look at that. Any questions, direct it to Mr. Tracy or Mr. Hunt for any answers. Cobart was brought up by Mr. Jaber, and we thought they would be breaking ground here shortly, and they haven't, so that will be a follow-up with the planning department on, how long or when they're going to get started. And Mr. Jaber asked about the cigar shop. It's been 4 weeks, and he's been waiting, and the mayor said that the application, it's in the building department right now, and he will follow up on that. Mr. Heidick was asking about, no, I'm sorry, they were asking, Mrs. DeBevick asked about why Barberton, why Summit County went to Barberton, because we have some school programs and whatnot, and actually, we can thank them for including us in this technical grant. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Sidewalks, Streets, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting met today, October 4th, 2021 at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. All committee members were present and council members and guests noted on my sheet. There was no request for legislation today. We had just a few pieces of miscellaneous discussion. First piece of miscellaneous discussion was about the trash services and street sweeping. And discussion followed with basically feedback on how to, ideas on how to possibly disseminate information and improve information dissemination. Mr. Tracy gave an update on the streets. He mentioned that 5th Street was set to be finished paving, the surface done on it, hopefully later this week into next week, but that's tentative, so fingers crossed that that works. But he did mention in the email too that there shouldn't be an issue of them completing this at all, but he did want to say that that was a tentative date for that. The company that's going to come in, when they do 224, they're going to do 5th Street, so hopefully that's here soon. Piran is completed with all the side roads, residential roads, and is going to be coming back through and doing utility adjustments as well as some landscape work to finalize the road program for 2021. There was no further discussion, and Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting adjourned at 6:16 p.m., and with that, I pass.
Okay, thank you. Next up is City Utilities, Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met in council chambers September 27th, 2021. All members were present. We had no request for legislation. We have no pending legislation, and there was no miscellaneous discussion. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. Mrs. DeBevick, Public Welfare and Safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met last Monday evening, September 27th, 2021, here in council chambers. We had 2 requests for legislation. The first was a letter from Chief Robert Persley requesting legislation to enter into a contract with Stryker in the amount of $93,467.24 for the purchase of 4 power load cot fastener systems to be installed in the Barberton Fire Department's ambulances. Emergency wording was requested. Stryker is the sole provider of this equipment, and he is asking for emergency wording so the project can be completed by the quote's expiration date of 12/13/2021. Last week, Chief Persley gave us a good description and explanation of the Stryker power load cot fastener systems that would be installed in the ambulance. He also mentioned these are quickly becoming the standard of care. They increase safety for both our patients and our first responders. Obviously, it negates the risk of dropping a patient, and it also reduces the chance of injury to our safety forces when the patient is being loaded into the ambulance. We currently have 5 ambulances, of which 1 is a bariatric unit. The load cot fastener systems will enable us to reduce the number of ambulances to 4, saving money. The cost of these load systems will be financed over 3 years and will be paid for using fire levy funds because it's a capital improvement. He also mentioned that additional maintenance would be built into the fire budget. In addition, there were other questions, and he emailed us all because he was unable to answer some of them. The first one is, the first question that was asked, the warranty for the units is 1 year parts and labor, correct? Correct, 1 year warranty. Number 2, how long have the loading systems been around? The answer from Chief, going on 10 years now. Number 3, what departments around Barberton are using them? Chief's response, Norton, Fairlawn, New Franklin, Wadsworth, Greene, and Clinton. Number 4, useful life is estimated to be 7 years. Realistically, how long will these units be usable and serviceable? Chief's answer, dependent on number of runs and annual preventative maintenance, there are many departments who have had a lot of life still in them from 2011. I would say it's dependent on how well they're taken care of, but definitely safe to say 10 years now, with other departments having them for this long. And 5, are there any known maintenance issues with the units? No known maintenance issues at this time, and they have been reloaded over a year ago to fix any minor bugs. So those were the chief's questions or answers to the questions that were posed. So we will be voting on this piece of legislation next week. The second piece of legislation was a letter from Justin Greer requesting legislation to amend Section 675.02, Notice A and B, and 674.04, Cost of Abatement, A1 and 2 of the Barberton Codified Ordinances. We had a discussion about making adjustments to the current nuisance law to change from after 3 nuisance calls from between January 1st to December 31st, a fine is issued, to a rolling calendar from the first nuisance call for the residents in question. So essentially, the 365 days would begin on the date that that nuisance call was made, and it would begin its 365-day cycle. So we had some extensive conversation regarding the proposal, and we discussed acquiring some additional information from the police chief. Some of that information we were looking for is how much additional work would this cause, how many instances have fallen within these parameters, how many violation fees have actually been executed, what would be the effects of making this change. And so Mr. Greer and I are working on acquiring that information. In the meantime, the committee had decided to leave this in committee until we get answers to some of these questions. And with that, public welfare and safety will pass.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development, Mr. Shorter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on September 27th in council chambers, all members present and others as noted. We had no requests for legislation to call for. We did have a little miscellaneous discussion on theft of catalytic converters and their disposals. We adjourned at 6:47. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you. Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met October 4th, 6:17. All members are present. Our other council members also noted. We had no new request for legislation, but we did have a request for appointments. And a letter from Mayor Judge requesting reappointment confirmation of Terrell Fletcher to the Board of Health. The reappointment would commence January 1st, 2022 and end December 31st, 2026. And that passed. Motion did pass. And then we had no miscellaneous discussion. And we adjourned, sir, at 6:18. With that, pass.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick with City Properties, Parks, and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation met September 27th, 2021 at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. I unfortunately was battling an illness and was not able to attend. So before I start, thank you, Councilor Jaber and Councilor Coburn, for the notes here. I did take some of my own from watching from bed, getting better, thank you. We had no new requests for legislation. We did have legislation that was on the agenda that night. ordinance number 109, 2021, title appropriation Barberton Sports Community, Sports Complex, that appropriated $6,200 from the unappropriated item of the Parks revolving fund to the Parks Department operation. Ordinance 111, 2021, appropriation Mum Festival, appropriating $7,500 from the unappropriated item of Parks revolving fund to the Parks Department operation. It seemed like there was another one there, but then for miscellaneous discussion, Councilor Coburn thanked all the volunteers for the Mum Fest, which, according to Councilor Jaber's notes, I got many, many awesome reviews. And Councilor Angeloff wanted to make sure that everybody knew that people were happy to bring it back with more vendors capacity. And she especially wanted to thank Tammy, Kara, and Donna for their efforts this year, which they were tremendous. We adjourned at 6:04, and with that, I pass.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Fry, Finance and Personnel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel met last week, September the 27th, 2021, and also this week, October 4th, 2021. We met here in council chambers. All members of the committee were present. All council people were also present, and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We had no new requests for legislation, and all pending legislation had been voted on last week. Some of those pieces of legislation had been referred to us from other committees, and everything passed. Tonight, we had a little bit of miscellaneous discussion, but they were about things that really weren't related to finance. But Mr. Heidig had asked about the bus driver situation for the schools, and that was discussed for a few moments regarding how we could help them. But as was noted, the CDL operators that we have for the city have a different type of license than what you need for a bus driver. Mrs. DeBevick asked about the basketball courts being closed down at Tuscarora Park, and the mayor gave us an explanation about what had happened, and the decision was made by the mayor after consulting with the parks director, the safety director, and the police chief. There was no other discussion, and Finance and Personnel adjourned at 7:14 p.m. And with that, I will pass.
Okay, thank you. Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank Summit County Health, the Planning Department, Service Director for working on the Complete Streets program. You are seeing this throughout the country, and this is something that doesn't touch just one facet of what we do, right? So it touches transportation, obviously, it touches infrastructure, health, safety, a little bit of everything. Cities that are kind of being built now, if you will, ones that aren't 130 years old like us, they're kind of already incorporating this in. It's not easy to widen a street, right? So you have to make provisions, and what's the traffic count, what's the safety look like, and what neighborhoods are you in, and where are people coming from, where are they going? There's a lot that goes into it. But this is a great collaborative effort between the city and the health department, and we're fortunate to have these resources and to be chosen as a partner by Summit County Health. So, this Friday, R.D. Abbott and Novation SI, there's a ribbon cutting. This is a huge expansion here in the city. R.D. Abbott's a huge company, purchased Novation SI here in town, and we've been working with them for a while now. They purchased a large building at the end of Foundation Place, and they've been renovating that for their operation. So they're moving into that. Due to COVID, the company has limited the attendance for this event. But this is a great expansion for the city, and I'm happy to see that all the hard work that we've put in, working with them is coming to fruition here. So, a couple press releases went out last week. First, Hanna-Card Roller Coatings. We worked with them. We've been working with them for quite a while. Team Neo, Jobs Ohio, Summit County, and others. It's a Belgian company, purchased a facility here in town, a business, and they've made a decision to expand here in the city. So we've been working with them, and so that's a great collaboration between various organizations to keep a business here in town and to also have an expansion with that business. So very excited about that one for the coming years. All the city employees, including council, should have received an email last week. We are doing a survey of Lake Anna. This has also been put on our social media and in a press release issued as well. Also in my Mayor's Corner, which comes out this week, and also our e-newsletter. So with the committee meetings that we've been having on the American Rescue Plan funds, still no final guidance from the U.S. Treasury. And unfortunately, no one's really talking about that anymore. They're talking about the infrastructure bill and, temporarily not having the government shut down for the next few weeks. But no one's really talking about the infrastructure, or the American Rescue Plan. Unfortunately, the date to allocate the money and the date to spend the money has not changed. So, I mean, they're really shorting all the communities that got all this money, right? We don't know how we can really use it, specifically stating. So we figured that we would start looking at projects. So let's back a project in. We know we can use it for parks, but what aspect of the park, right? Can it be for electric? Can it be for infrastructure? Can it be for programming? So there's a lot of things that go into a project, especially a major renovation like Lake Anna Park, which has always been one that we've had, we've been ready to go because it needs a lot of TLC, but a lot of updates as well. We've been doing things throughout the years, whether it's upgrading the lighting to LED, cleaning out the lake itself, dragging it, those things, renovating the gazebo a few years ago. But a lot of the work hasn't been done. I think the last major renovation at the Visitor Center was '91 under Mayor Art Bradnick. So if we back this project in, you start with public engagement with the survey, and then we'll have some meetings, put an RFP out, and that's 30 to 45 days. Go through the cost and the bidding process. So by the time we get to where we need to be, hopefully those final guidelines come out and we know the cost to renovate it, what we're going to do, and what kind of bucket of money we can take it from, right? So you got the American Rescue Plan, you've got Infrastructure Improvement Reserve, there's probably grant funding through ODNR or some other funding organization. So we're still meeting on the American Rescue Plan and discussing things, but we're going to back this project in, do all the legwork, and then move forward. So my fear is that once the guidance comes out, now everybody's scrambling to get consultants, to get construction firms, to do all this, and everyone's going to be busy. So we're kind of backing this project in. So please take that survey, pass it along. It's open until October 20th, and we'll extend it if need be. 14 questions, and if we may follow it up with another survey depending on what we generate from this one. So great information we hope to generate from the survey, and all great things here in the future. Barberton was featured in the Cleveland.com article, Biking the Towpath, Top 20 Must-See Places. This came out last week. Barberton was featured at number 7, but I will say that there was no particular order from 1 to 20. So we did an interview with Cleveland.com the other week. So, I mean, we were one of the first ones to have a connection here off of Snyder Avenue. Now you can go from Cleveland all the way down past Zoar. And if you see talk to some of the local businesses downtown, they'll tell you about the Cleveland Bike Club and other bike clubs that come down to Barberton and make use of our downtown. And the Century Ride comes through Barberton, so a lot of great things. So it's really cool to be featured in this article through Cleveland.com. Very busy this week. We've got 11 meetings alone that just deal with economic development. So working with businesses directly or with developers. Had several today, and then the whole week, 11 different companies. So very, very busy. As, getting back to Tusk Park, that decision was not easy to make, but, you think about what would have happened if someone would have gotten shot after that, right? If more violence would have happened. You've got people in the hospital across the street there, which the park kind of is integrated with the hospital. You've got people walking, children, and playing on the swing sets in the park. And we can't tolerate this type of violence, and we won't. You always have different things happen at the park. You've got vandalism, you've got different disagreements and different things like that. But I think this was a lot different, and when guns are involved, that's where I put my foot down. So we're looking at all of these things at all of our parks. So whether it's vandalism, it's the use of the park. You recall last year, or the year before, we looked at Newton Park and making that a soccer complex and got the cost back there. So we're constantly looking at our parks and how to best use them. And we're doing an analysis of the parks, if you will. We've made investments up in over on the west side at McCafferty. Unfortunately, over there at Harder Park, we had some equipment burned down several years ago. So Foundation Fields, we're always making an investment in our parks. So we want to make sure that families are using them, that people are using them. And so when people come in and they start shooting, we've got to take a strong stance. And I think with the weather getting colder, with other parks, basketball courts open, with Tusk Park continuing to be open, I think we've made the right decision. We'll evaluate this. We actually have a meeting tomorrow on this, and we'll go from there. So I'll keep council updated as we move forward with that. I think that's all I have, sir.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question? Mr. Mayor, on the American Rescue Plan, does Akron and all other surrounding communities play the same? We have play by the same rules?
Correct.
Because I hear a lot of things coming out of Akron and northern Summit County, about the money being spent and stuff, but
So
that's not true.
Well, a lot of the projects that I've seen from other communities are very general, right? So
Okay.
I know that we can use this money to fix water lines.
Okay,
So if you think of, you got to dig through the street to fix the water line, you fix the water line, the infrastructure, you repave the road. I haven't made that commitment yet because there's this lingering infrastructure bill. I'd hate to spend money on fixing infrastructure, then this bill comes down and says, well, now you can't use that money because you already spent the money on infrastructure. So it's this chess game that we're playing. So we want to make sure that we're making the right decisions. Down at the state level, there's still deciding or discussing or arguing, whichever adjective you want to use, on broadband.
right.
And so we want to look, is that included in the infrastructure bill? So we want to be very calculated when we make decisions. And I feel that once the final guidance comes out, things will move very quickly.
Okay.
So, as we talked the other week, there'll be some requests from city council here in the future, and we want to move forward, but it's this real chess game of kind of the unknown with the infrastructure bill. We got the American Rescue Plan, and then some of our internal funding, and then, other grant funding that could be potential out there as well, so.
Yes, because, Barberton as a community, we can't afford to miss a deadline and lose any money.
Right.
That's what I don't want to happen. We need too many things done, because I did hear, from some of the people about the money being spent, so.
So nothing has been spent yet, that would come to
For
city
Barberton,
council.
right.
We did create an application, so even if the city uses money, the city's gonna fill out the application. So it's gonna be a nice audit trail, and it's gonna give an overview of what the money was for. If it's project X and it cost, $5, simple terms, $5, what other money was used to leverage that $5? So did we spend $2 of American Rescue Plan and $1 from the state, $1 from here? So it'll be a nice audit trail and recap of every project and every dollar spent, so. Yes.
Thank you. I just kind of want to piggyback off of Mr. Griffin. I think we have telepathy this evening.
Yes.
So when I listened to one of the, I guess, podcasts regarding the ARPA money, it was mentioned about the fact that we could use, revenue lost is definitely something that is approved, in that we would have to calculate the revenue lost over, I believe it was 2 years, I'm not certain the length of time, but it did incorporate for the city of Barberton, the time when B&W left, like, that was part of it. So we could potentially show a significant loss in revenue. So if we do that, that loss of revenue then goes correct to the departments that showed a loss, to the funds where a loss was shown. Am I correct or incorrect?
And so that's some of the discussion that's happening, because I've also heard that based on the wording, it should go to the general fund. And then it's up to the community if they want to split it out to the various departments that lost revenue. But then I've heard it other ways, that if you lost revenue in these 5 funds, it's got to go back in proportion to what was lost. So that's definitely something we can do. It's just kind of that tweaking, what's the right, when you read it, what's the right clarification of the verbiage?
So I guess my point to that is that with if we used a portion of it for the revenue law through that avenue, it would already be allocated from that fund, and it essentially no longer has an expiration date. So,
Correct.
So that, to me, that's just a very smart move, because that buys us time if we have to. So I just wanted to see if I was on the right page with that, and,
Yeah, we kind of want to, we know all this, we want to wait until we get final guidance.
I'm sorry, she
Well,
distracted me.
We've discussed this at the meetings. Jeremy's talked to, been on webinars, and so have I and others. So we've been discussing this. We haven't made any moves. We wait until the final guidance comes out. The last webinar Mr. Flaker was on, they said, don't spend anything right now. That was the advice. So, yes.
I just wanted to mention that what you just brought up, I made a series of reports, and I don't think anybody's read them.
I've actually read them.
It has said in my report more than once that Jeremy has said that we can replenish revenue. However, it has to be your entire budget. You cannot pick and choose which funds that you want to replenish.
Which I think is okay.
And he is now in the process of figuring out how to calculate that.
If I may? Oh, thank you. Even if we could use that money to replenish lost revenue, I'm of the opinion that I wouldn't want to do that, because we're essentially just kicking the can further down the road. We have to live with that B&W was gone. We have to live with certain things, and one shot in the arm 1 year is just delaying the inevitable. When you do your budgets, you're working with what we have now. If plugging it into lost revenue, to me, just seems like you just fixed a fishing pole that you should have thrown away.
But, so the lost revenue can go on for several years.
4 years.
4 years?
4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So so we could kick the can down for 4 years.
Right.
But we have to accept with what we have now. I'm of the opinion that any of that money should be used for any projects we can that normally we couldn't, because we're not going to get this opportunity again. Hopefully the virus does this to us again, bankrupt the entire country. But to replenish sorry, I'm eating my mask. Replenish lost revenue, to me, is just, there you go. We're going to use it up and it'll be gone, and now we're back to where we are right now. So we might as well use it for any projects we can.
Well, one of my goals for the use of this money, and this won't apply to everything because it can't necessarily, but can we put it into projects that will generate more money? You buy stocks and bonds to make more money, right? So can you put it into projects that'll increase income taxes? So you look back 10 years from now and you say, yeah, that's the right decision because whatever it was put into is generating more money. So we're looking at all those things.
Anybody have anything else to say? Go ahead.
I have a comment, or I just have a question, and it's not related to the American Rescue Plan Act. But earlier, when Mr. Hunt gave us the presentation, he mentioned that he had a handout regarding the complete streets to pass out, but he didn't pass it out. So will we?
No, he's going to email
Yeah,
it.
email.
He's going to email it.
Okay, I apologize. He had it in his hand. So anyway, I just wondered if they would be in our mailboxes, or, so he's going to email it. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
He actually emailed Laura before he left and asked her to disperse it, so you'll have it.
You'll have it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the mayor stated with R.D. Abbott, with their ribbon cutting Friday, I had been in contact with one of their representatives from down in Texas. They're very, very excited to move to Barberton, to be in Barberton. The reason they're doing limited attendance is they have people coming from out of town. They still want to be wary of COVID protocols. The reason that I was in a lot of contact was they are so excited to be in the city, they were looking for more information on different food and drink vendors and bakeries and everything, because for what they planned on having a decent-sized opening, they wanted to use only Barberton vendors to supply them with, I mean, not donate, but they were going to pay for it, but to supply all the food, all the beverages, everything. They wanted to stay completely within the bounds of Barberton and use our businesses only. So that was a nice thing of them. But unfortunately, they said a lot of their people are driving in from Pittsburgh and going to be here just for that and going right back out. So they are doing a limited attendance thing. Hopefully, next year they'll have a big blowout. As the mayor said, the Lake Anna survey, I've been combing through the social media posts and comments. A lot of people don't fill out surveys, but they will more than happily go online and say something. So I've been sifting through comments every which way to see what people are saying, and I'll have a list next week for the Parks and City Properties Committee to share with everybody. One thing I'd like to make clear, Mayor, the money that we're talking about here cannot be used for roads, correct?
It's roads by itself?
Yes, to pave roads.
I don't believe so, right.
Okay.
Correct.
So,
Unless it goes directly to the general fund, right?
Yeah, you can offset it and goes to the general fund and then over there, so.
but you can't directly use that money. You can't earmark $16 million
For roads.
for roads.
No.
Okay. Just want to make that clear.
The word road shows up one time in the whole ARPA plan.
Yeah.
Okay. But I just wanted to make it perfectly clear, because a lot of people, when the survey was posted and it said, what would you like to see with Lake Anna, you know, these questions here, fill out this survey, every fifth comment is pave the roads. Well, I'm not meaning this to be sarcastic, but the topic is Lake Anna. I didn't know Lake Anna had a road running through it. But,
That we're building a bridge.
Has a fountain.
well, we could do that. But, no, I will sift through those for people that either don't have social media accounts or don't want to sift through those. But I did just want to point out, we can't just write a blank check to Perrin to pave the roads. Thank you.
Real quick, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You know, I think this year we really capped off, I mean, there's bad roads out there, so I'm gonna get beat up on social media for saying this, right? But I think some of the worst roads were completed this year, or are in the midst of being completed. Second Street, Southwest, worst street, one of the worst streets, and we had to kind of really work to get that moved up the list. Fifth Street, horrible, so that's gonna be completed as well. And then there's, 7th Street Northeast was really bad. I mean, there's still a lot of bad streets out there, but, we've been doing an unbelievable job over the years. And I tell people, there's time and money, right? Those are the biggest constraints. Just wait, we'll get to it. We're already working on next year's list. Roads are a major infrastructure issue for all communities. So we're addressing that, but it's gonna take some time, so, I'm sorry.
I promise you, this is my last statement / question. It is actually a question for the two of you. So if we used the revenue lost option and the money went back, and obviously we didn't lose $16 million in revenue, so we're not talking about all of the money going back in there. At least I would guess not. if we use that option and the money went back into the general fund, my proposal isn't that we hoard it and save it. We could potentially then spend it on roads, am I correct?
You could allocate it to.
Allocate it, if it's in the general fund, it could be part of the budget and spend additional money. Is the way I understood the webinar that I sat through, but I could be wrong.
I'm sorry, if I may, didn't one of the reports, and I may be wrong here, I may be thinking of something else, that that money cannot be leveraged to get more grants because it's given to us, or am I thinking of something different that we talked about?
He's trying to leverage it with other organizations so that we can get the most bang for the buck. It didn't say,
We can't go back to them.
I beg your pardon?
We can't use that money to go back
To
and
get more
apply.
federal grants.
Right.
To
no,
get like-
no, we
Right.
cannot. We
That's
cannot.
what I thought, we couldn't
That's it.
Okay.
do that to, yeah.
Well, and so, we don't want to offset, do a revenue loss and then go pave a bunch of roads. I mean, because whenever we pave a road, we look at the road itself. We look at what's going on. Is there new construction happening? Because we're not going to pave a road if we know that construction's going to happen. They're going to tear the road up as we're putting it in. Is there anything going on underneath the road? Water line, sewer, stormwater, does that need to be addressed beforehand, right? And so we take a deeper look at every road and what needs fixed or what can we do. There's a house on the far west side. There's 3 blocks. We did both far blocks, but not the middle one. And so went out there, talked to the residents. We knew a house was being built. So we waited until the house was done, concrete trucks, asphalt, all that. Excavators, we paved it the next year. 7th Street Northeast. The gas company's been talking about replacing gas lines there for a long time. And then, next year comes around and they don't do it. Next year comes around, we're gonna do it, they don't do it. So we paved it, but we check all these things. So there's a lot of time and effort that goes into the list and the streets. So we want to take a deeper dive, so we do it right the first time. We're not coming back to fix things that should have been
I
addressed.
just got
the first
one
time.
more, Bill.
Yeah.
Okay, excuse me, Carol. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The sewers and stuff like that, that's infrastructure, am I correct? Okay, so if you have to put new sewers in, you gotta tear the road up. Can't you spend that same money to repair the road?
Right.
So if you went down this one street and say, hey, we gotta do all the sewers, or new outlets or something, but we gotta tear the road up. So in other words, you can use all that money to tear and the new roads too, right?
Right, the caution is,
What?
there's an infrastructure bill out there. It's
Yeah,
just for infrastructure.
right.
I'm just gonna say this, I don't wanna spend $16 million on infrastructure, then the bill gets passed, and they go, well,
You can't use it for.
you can always do infrastructure, right? But if we could have used this 16 million over here for a lot of other things, and then used the infrastructure money. So it's this chess game, and they've been kicking the can down the road with the infrastructure bill down in DC for, they were supposed to take a vote last week.
Well, what's going on down there, they may be kicking it down the road for another 3 years.
Yeah.
And you may not get nothing.
So, I mean, they're talking about
And that's why I
trillions of
said
dollars. So we want to make sure
have to
we
live
make
in the
use of what
now.
we said.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to mention, since you were talking about getting beat up on social media, please mention Worcester Road West, because that gets so many complaints. And as we all know, we have a grant for it, and it is gonna be done. So put that out there when you're saying we did all the worst roads, or you're gonna get bombarded tomorrow.
Well, and if you've been down Worcester Road West, they started several months ago, there's spray paint all over the street and the sidewalks, and that's a full reconstruction. So, I'll get beat up because now there's gonna be large detours, but it's gonna be right around 2nd Street, 3rd Street by McDonald's, all the way up to Johnson's Corners. So, street, sewers, curb, all that. So it's a major reconstruction. Mr. Tracy, that's what, about $5 million total?
No, it's closer to 12 when you include the Worcester part, the phase 1 from the viaduct to
Okay.
4th Street, and then from 4th Street all the way to Johnson Corner, 2 separate projects, but it's about $12 million.
So, a lot going on. And a lot of those funding projects, Uncle Sam, we applied for it back in, 14, 15, 16, got the award, and they're just releasing the money now, so. So Uncle Sam's paying 80%. So we've really leveraged taxpayers' dollars.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. James.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but today Facebook was down all day. I'm not on Facebook a lot, but so much you guys know Facebook is on. Maybe we can do a selfie finally. We can do a group picture. You guys ready for a group picture yet? No?
Wait till we can take these off.
All right. I'm excited for a group picture. We need a one group picture.
Counselor Jaber, when we can take these off and these can get put back in storage, I'll be more than happy.
You ready? On that note.
Anyone else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 8:03.